Well, so the idea here is that kind of taking this pretty free form, right? We've got some great speakers already, thanks to Sebastian and Gord already, who've spoken, of course, to Chase and Matthew are going to speak later, but we're going to bring three professionals in our community down in Seattle who are focused on field recording, or at least have a depth of experience. I'd like to introduce Andy Martin, Robbie Elias, and Pete Comley. You guys come up. You guys want chairs?
Oh yeah, the stools have been great. I can sit on stools.
And this was really just meant to be kind of an informal way to leverage the resources in our community. You know, generally with this Bellingham Audio Meetup, right? It's great to have people who know things to talk fancy about them. I like that. I'm a fan of that. And on that note, I asked these three fine fellows today to talk a bit about field recording, just in a general kind of way. And I might kick them off with a couple questions to get the juices flowing here, but really the intention from my perspective was to kind of open it up for just a free-flowing discussion about field recording. If I can maybe query the crowd for everyone, how many people have a recorder on them today? How many people are carrying a phone that can record? Yeah, okay. So, yeah, so we all technically have a recorder, right? Which means at any time you could be recorded. But I think that the reason you're all here is because you take that to a bit higher level. And so if I could maybe just kick it off by asking, what's your rig? You're gonna go out, you're gonna get some sound. What are you bringing with you? Let's talk gear for a second.
You've got the most interesting one.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle, but I guess I'm first. I have, well, there's microphones and recorders, and preamplifiers, of course. I use the sound devices, 2-track rigs. I have a 722, which has a hard drive built in, and the 702T, which has time code, which I've never used. But they're essentially identical, it's just that one has more memory than the other, and one has time code and the other one doesn't. Great preamps, so I don't have to worry about an extra preamp. And then for microphones, I have a couple of the old, not the current model, but an older model from the 80s of the with binaural heads. I have an extra one in case I drop one off a cliff. I've never taken it out of the box. Just in case. And I have a lot of the Sennheiser MKH series, not to do with 80 in front of everything that everyone is coveting now. I have the old ones, trying to be happy with them, because I can't afford to replace them all.
And I'm sure they're great.
Yeah, and they are very good, as long as you're not getting reminded how awesome the other ones are too. But we're getting very nitpicky and gear lusty at that level. And then I have, kind of your road and writeup windscreens, which if you're going outside your house, you really absolutely have to have. And then instead of kind of studio style mic stands, I use camera stuff, tripods, things that can be set up on regular surfaces. And then that's all the big heavy stuff. Sometimes I don't feel like carrying that all, or if I can't take all that stuff. I have to scale it to whatever the situation is. Sometimes I'll just take a little Sony M10 or something. So the recorder you have is better than the recorder you don't have because it didn't carry.
Cool. Totally good.
Oh, and you just reminded me, and I also have one of the Talinga dish mics, which I've had a couple of years. I haven't really used it that much. It's a real special thing. Works very well on birds, which is what it was made for. I'll try it on other things. It's mixed results and very hard to carry around. But for birds, I've gotten some fantastic results with it.
Cool.
And that's the answer.
Yeah.
I have more stuff, but that's the basic.
And you've got like 6 rigs, or at least 2, because you're always carrying around a backpack that's got one in it.
Well, so the backpack that I have that's got one in it has my main rig, which is a 702 sound devices again. one thing I like about it is you can pretty much drop kick it across the room, and or dunk it in boiling water, or stick it in a freezer, and it'll still go. And as well as just being very, very, very quiet. That's my main recorder. I also have use a Marantz PMD 661. I used to have a Zoom H4n long time ago. I still have it in my daughter's room. But the Marantz is, again, a very nice, clean, quiet recorder. I got it from, there's this company in Ohio called Oade Brothers, O-A-D-E Brothers, and they resell portable recorders that they have basically gutted and reworked the preamps and capsules in. And they'll tune them for your whatever your needs are going to be. Like they have one version that's more directed towards ambient recordings, and they have one that's for concerts and others.
Yeah, there's a kind of a huge legacy of modifying recorders based on live recording and that kind of thing. Yeah.
And for microphones, I use the Sennheiser fancy MKHs with the 80 in front of them. They're really good. So yeah, I have an 80-60 shotgun and a pair of 80-20 omnidirectional mics that I have fallen in love with. I still use an MKH30 because for some reason Sennheiser has decided they don't need to make a bi-directional version of the 8000 series, so you just have to buy one of their older versions. For my ambient recordings, I'm generally doing an omnidirectional MS, so I use an 80-20 for the center channel and the 80-30 for the sides. I used to do a lot of ORTF recordings with the mics that we have in the studio. So I work at, you didn't say anything, but I work at Tucker Punch in Bellevue. And we've got a pair of 8040s and a pair of NT5s, and I used to do ORTF recordings with those, and then I've just really fallen in love with doing the mid-side Omni. It just has a much nicer space and directionality to the recording format. And then I have a lot of fun mics. My favorite microphone is a Radio Shack telephone pickup mic. It costs like $7. Get 3 of those and plug them into stuff and wave them around, and you'll find weird sounds all around you. And a lot of contact mics, and a hydrophone, and a few other things, but just stuff to play with and try and play.
Nice. Nice, Robbie, what's in the
And
bag?
headphones.
Headphones.
I've got, I'll start small. I got the Zoom H1, the Sony M10, the Sony D100. I've got 2 hydrophones and 2 contact mics, which are JRFs, which are pretty cheap and they're good quality. I got some fun mics. I got, there's this one that one of our coworkers introduced me to, which is a light to sound sensor. So you can wave it around lights and it makes weird sounds.
Is that the one from Austin?
Some guy on the internet made some.
Yeah, there's a company in Austin. You have to solder it together.
He did them for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just bought 4 straight up because I was worried he'd run out. So I was like, yeah. I also got some EMI mics, you hold it against weird stuff. And then I've got 2 sound devices, 702Ts. They're like my favorite recorders, just because I think they sound the best out of the 7 series. I'm not a big fan of the 788 as much as the 702s. And I like the time code because you can sync multiple ones to each other, and you can just hit record on one and they all record, so I like that. For those, I have an 8070, the fancy 800. It's a long shotgun. So that's a long shotgun. And then I've got a 418, which is an MS shotgun from Sennheiser, and then I've got a Sheps MS, which is it's a Super CMIT shotgun for the front, and it's I can't remember if it's a CCM they call it or a CMM8, but it's made by Sheps. It's just a figure 8 mic to complete the MS. And that's pretty much my rig. I do have one mic I want to get, which is it's a Sanken C100K. I'm obsessed with that mic. I can't find where to buy it, but it's really hard to order, but it records higher sample rates, so I want that one really bad.
I got one of them. I've got one of them.
Oh, I'm jealous. Don't even tell me about it. No, it's too funny. But yeah, I really want that mic next.
So let me throw a lofty question at you. You're all geared up, you're headed out to capture a sound, or maybe you don't even know what you're going to capture. Is there a fundamental kind of credo that you carry with you into the field that you're trying to, I don't know, be true to? And by that I mean, there's some field recorders, it's in their DNA to find the place with the least human involvement, or the sound you're trying to capture it in its most pristine environment. I guess maybe it's more ideological, but when you're headed out into the field, what are you trying to accomplish, like in a general kind of way?
I think it honestly depends. If I'm going out to record something specific or not. So I take a lot of trips out into the mountains, ostensibly to record ambiances. And when I do that, I have two things I'm looking for. One is someplace I've never recorded before, so someplace that's new, and someplace with no humans. Getting as far away from anthropogenic, I love that word, sounds created by humans. Getting as far away from anthropogenic sound as possible. But there's really, I don't necessarily have a modus operandi that I'm going with. I just go until something feels right. A lot of times you're driving out into the woods and you have to start visually, like what looks interesting. That forest road over there looks interesting. I'll drive up that forest road until I come to a place where it also looks interesting, and I might want to stop, and you stop and you get out of the car and you sit for 15 minutes going, yep, it sounds like a mountain forest road with a river in the background. So I'm trying to get back in the car and keep going. But a lot of times it'll just be things that capture my attention. If you go out into national forests where they do logging, they leave these giant mounds of wood detritus, wood crap lying all over the place. And you think, well, I was planning on coming out to do some bird recording, but giant mound of wood crap. So I keep a crowbar with me at all times, crowbar and goggles and work gloves.
That wasn't in your gear list.
It wasn't in my gear list because it's not in my bag right now.
But
It should have been.
okay.
So things you want to keep with you: crowbar, work gloves, safety glasses, and a hard hat. Because then you can just start tackling into that wood detritus and have fun. There's really, I rarely have sort of a thing that I'm going for unless it's like a dedicated specific trip. Like I'm going here to record these birds, but when I'm there to record those birds, they'll end up being about 5% what I'm actually recording. The rest of it is just whatever I find on that.
I agree with pretty much everything you just said. so I don't have to say it twice. Similar modus operandi. Sometimes you choose the subject, you go out looking for it, other times the subject kind of finds you, and you have to scramble to get, like sometimes, just outside of my apartment, the garbage truck would be having a bad day. Just doing something really nuts that, would be useful for some, dying boss monster robot later. So you have to go, you just collect the stuff and as best you can. So being on your toes for sounds of opportunity and some going out of your comfort zone to go find things. I like to travel. I find if you travel, your ears are just automatically in refresh mode and everything is new and interesting to you. And the further out of where you live you've gone, especially to another country or to another climate, biosphere, whatever, you get all kinds of different, it's a vacation for your ears. I spent a month in Indonesia. It's just, the tragedy of that place is that it's filled with, it's like being in a Star Wars movie. It's that level of, you're hearing stuff that's very exotic and different, from your perspective if you live here. But they have so many motorcycles there, little two-stroke, super loud that no matter where you are, and some, like it might look like a postcard, visually, but you've got an amazing soundscape, but you've also got lots of noise pollution problems, so you're working around that. So to answer your question, I'm out there in the field, I'm trying to make all these decisions, and a lot of it comes down to how much physical discomfort are you willing to endure to get something pristine and nice. Because at the end of the trip, you come back, you had an opportunity, and if you're like, I'm going back to the hotel, I'm tired, then you have to listen to your not satisfactory recordings forever, or not like them, or feel bad about them. At the end, all you have is that recording. So I'm willing to put myself into a lot of discomfort to get things. If that means, like say I'm trying to record a train, and I know it comes by every 45 minutes, and a plane went over and ruined the first run. Some guy came up and talked to me at the absolute wrong time. Hey, what are you doing? Ruined that one. Okay.
That's a good mic.
Yeah, exactly. I get a lot of jokes about windscreens. Hey, I think your dog died. I think that's hilarious.
That's if I'm a chimney sweep.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Serious. It wasn't a joke. It was
Oh,
serious.
really? Okay.
I have a business card.
Recording in public is weird. You have to come up with ways to deal with people without being unproductively rude to them. I find just standing really still and not making eye contact works. Phones work. If you look at a phone, no one will care where you're standing. But if you're standing without a phone, people will just go, why is that guy standing there? The human, you become kind of a misanthrope pretty fast doing this stuff. So avoiding people, avoiding problems, just waiting it out. The wind can be a problem, rain can be a problem. But I find that, if you wait it out long enough, you will get that perfect take or close enough, or enough stuff that you can perform studio brain surgery on all these takes and get something out of it. So it's that don't leave empty-handed, I think, is kind of the motto.
Nice.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all that stuff. I tend to not do a lot of nature ambient recordings. I tend to do a lot of work-related stuff, like record guns or stuff like that, or animals. So mostly my focus is isolation and also perspective. So I try to do different perspectives and listen to it on over here versus over here and how my mic placement changes based off of that. And then I try to get as much out of one individual thing as possible. So I'm constantly trying to get as much as possible, try to get the most amount of useful stuff. And if it sounds like that versus if it sounds like that, I'll capture every perspective I can.
Do you find the sounds you go to record then are a little more staged than maybe the field recording kind of experience?
Some of them are, like guns, obviously they're staged,
Yeah.
but you do have the environment and you're actually trying to record the environment too. So there's that aspect of it.
Yeah.
And you're always trying to get distance guns as well.
Yeah.
I do record a lot of machines and stuff like that, and those I find are not as staged.
Yeah.
And I walk around, I do a lot of machinery stuff, and to avoid people, like Pete's issue there is I use my M10 is the best for that. because it kind of looks like a little music player thing. So I just kind of move my thumb on it and pretend like I'm looking for music. I do that a lot. And also, another trick I do is when I use my M10 and I'm trying to do stuff around the city, I don't use good headphones. I use really crappy ones, so it looks like I'm actually like just listening to music and not really have this production about it. So if it's something like around my apartment, outside around there, that's what I'll do to try to get the best sound for that.
Yeah, the stealth is an interesting thing because when you're going around the city, especially like if you're in downtown Seattle, standing out there with people, just looking at you. I mean, behavior changes even if they don't come up to you directly. Behavior changes when they see that you have something weird and unusual. It's sort of the same thing that news camera people have when they put up the camera and suddenly everyone walks around this way instead of directly across because they don't want to be on camera. And so you have to find interesting ways of hiding or camouflaging the stuff you have with you. And so one of the things that I do is I have a soft carrier pet bag, like you would carry a cat in going to a vet, and then you just plop your microphone right in there, and people just think you're carrying your cat around with you. Occasionally, I'll get someone going, "Oh, you have an adorable cat in there," and I'm like, "Yeah."
That's good.
It doesn't have a face.
No, it's like,
But it's a great way of, like, if you just want to get crowd sounds, downtown for a little while, just take your best microphone kit with you and just plop it down. Nobody notices.
It's fucking cool.
I told everyone.
Nice. So this is meant to be, kind of loose. So if you have questions, go for it.
I have a question that's not necessarily technique or gear related, but is something that I think is really integral to what field reporting is about. It's like you were talking about avoiding people, but sometimes there are people that you can't avoid because they're standing between, they're the gatekeepers of the access between you and what you want to record. So do you have any tips to deal with the problem of accessing cool locations or cool equipment and stuff like that? If you can speak broadly on that or some anecdotes of where
I find that people are really receptive to it. So just talking to them and explaining to them what you're trying to do, and they'll be really receptive to that. I go to the 24-hour fitness, and I asked one of the fitness trainers. I explained to him what I did, and he was really excited about that. And next thing you know, he let me in after hours to record whatever I want. And if you explain the situation and you ask them permission to do it, they're going to either get out of your way and be really helpful to you, or they'll let you into that area that you might not expect you might get into.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. It doesn't hurt to ask. Sometimes people say no. Sometimes people feel they don't have the authority to say yes or no, so they just say no. And it can be awkward asking and so forth, but it's kind of like making friends, but you just have this strange hobby. And I found that people that have their own weird hobby that happens to be the thing you want to record, they're like, "You have a weird hobby too," and then you're best buds right away. So basically, you just go, if you're just getting a lot of grief and stonewalling, it's usually best to just give up and try somewhere else. But you will find people that will bend over backwards to help you. And then you find people that, some people instinctively understand how microphones work even if they have no experience. They'll know that, if they step on a twig across the room, that your mic might pick it up. They just seem to have an instinct for it. Other people will be having a conversation right next to you while you're recording, and "Oh, sorry, I just forgot," and they don't mean any harm. So it's all over the map. So it's just a lot of patience and working with people and that kind of thing. But I find that when you do find people that are into what you're doing and support what you're doing, cultivate that relationship, because some of those relationships can go on for years. And if you meet someone with, say they have the last working steam-powered potato peeler or something, they want to share the thing. You know? So they're happy to have you come over, and you know, you buy them lunch, and pretty soon you have a whole bunch of new friends.
Yeah, like Pete was saying, it doesn't hurt to ask. And one of the tricks that I've had to learn about getting permission to record somewhere, if I'm not going to talk directly to the person that I know owns or operates the particular thing, is to carry my business cards with me, but also ask, who should I talk to about recording this? Because for some reason, like if you just straight out ask, I was wondering if I could record this thing, people will say, "Oh, no, we're kind of busy. We've got stuff to do, and there's stuff going on." But if you ask, who should I talk to about this, then they're automatically starting to think, oh, hey, maybe I should have them talk to my manager. This is the person I can, they want to get rid of you, so they're going to palm you off on the person that you can actually talk to.
Yeah, good one. We have one more question.
I had an anecdotal thing about me and Groop were doing a bunch of wild footstep recording here in the park. By the way, find out if they're felling trees before you do that.
Trying to get footsteps in the sand.
But we went to two different parks, and both times, this is up in Vancouver, we had parks people come up to us and be like, "What do you do?" We were just like, "Oh, we're just recording sounds." Both times we had, "Oh, you're not filming, so you don't need a permit, so this is fine." So there is a lot to be said for saying, "I'm recording sound. I am not filming anything." There's a lot of stuff, like in Vancouver, I'm sure Seattle's the same, of people who film stuff, and there's we need permits and stuff for that, but there's no permits needed for sound recording. So we play nice a lot of times. People are like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, and similar to that, I find if I tell people I work for a video game company, but I'm recording sounds for a library that it'll be part of my personal collection and may or may not get used. I'm just recording stuff because I collect sounds. They're much more willing to give me broad access than if I specifically say I'm recording such and such for the video game project I'm working on. When I say that it's for a specific project or for the company, their thoughts automatically start to turn to, well, what am I allowed to show this person, or how much should we charge in order to give them access? But just simply saying, I collect sounds, it opens up a lot more doors than saying, I work for Sony.
This is my weird hobby.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they want money, right?
Yeah, unless it's Woodland Park, then they just always want money.
We have time for one more?
Yeah.
Gordon?
I was wondering what tips you guys might have for recording really loud stuff, loud transient stuff. You do lots. Impacts and gunshots.
No, pads.
Oh, pads.
Microphone.
Yeah.
Turn the game down.
And I think that my main thing is what are techniques for minimizing the transient to tail ratio in the recording itself? Are there any?
Well, when I record guns, for example, I do clip it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't clip it to the point where you can hear it, but I clip it enough. I don't use a limiter on the recorder. Some people do, and that's a totally good way to do it too. I don't like how it kind of softens the transient a little bit. I tend to go with a lot of microphones and a lot of channels so that I can experiment with different options. So some of them I might not clip, some of them I might. And every mic handles it differently. It's important to also know your microphone because, for example, the Sheps MS that I have, I can't go mid to close with that microphone because it'll overload and it can't handle it at all. It cannot handle it. Same with Fritz, actually. It's the same way. If you put that microphone anything but distant, you're going to get useless stuff. And it's about knowing how much SPL it can handle as well as how it's going to react. And then also I constantly try to listen back as much as possible. So I use the Sennheiser headphones with a 30 dB of attenuation on them. So that's really good because then I can always listen back and I don't have as much of the environment around me, so I can get a good understanding of if I'm going too far with it or if I'm not. Pads are also useful. It depends on the microphone for that. Like a lot of the microphones that we use close don't need it. Like the 418, it's not a great ambient MS microphone, but if you put it in front of a gun, you put it at the exact volume setting, it's going to record a great sound. No matter what, no matter where you put it, it just really handles it well versus other microphones. So it depends on what you're doing. But then you got to be careful with steady, loud sounds though, because that's when the pads are super important. Like on a plane or something, like it'll just distort and it'll be useless. So that's where it comes into play. But if it's if it's a sharp transient, you can get it pretty good. And I usually watch how long it stays before it decays out. And there's a certain amount of time that I can't tell you offhand, but when I watch it, I just know that that's a good transient versus bad.
Right. And one of the things about the sound devices that I really like is that their preamps are so very quiet that you don't feel like you have to have them cranked up the whole time. You can play it really safe with the level down really low, knowing that, okay, even if it ends up with a quiet recording, I can pull it up afterwards in my workstation, whatever it may be, without that sudden floor of noise rising up really drastically with it.
I will say too, something to note too is the 788's gain is different than the 702's gain, and that kind of screwed me on a couple of recordings because the 788 records way hotter than the 702. So if you're used to the 702, you can't use the same setting. You have to go actually way lower.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's why I don't like that recorder. I think that the fact that it's not consistent. I know that the 702 is great and it's easy to use, and I don't like the 788 because it's more complicated.
I don't have much to add to that. We've been on some of the same gun recording sessions actually, and I've seen Rocky at work. And he's Mr. Million Channels. He's got everything covered so that half the microphones can be screwed up. It's usually a few microphones are screwed up. It's because of all the experimentation and just everything is covered. So you always get a good transient. You can get really picky about it because there's so much material to choose from. And I think. And you talked about for compression in the field, I don't think we ever used it when we worked there, but I think there was some experiments with Nagras doing it the old-fashioned way. And I think all we got was loud birds in the background.
Cool, well, we're going to wrap on that note. I just want to say thanks to the panel, thanks for the good questions.